Whew. So we're gonna talk about it. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I've been thinking, should I share this and should I not? But I feel like not enough people talk about this, especially as a creative, especially as a black creative, especially as a graphic designer. And I feel that I want to tell the truth so that if people end up being in the same situation that I was in and I have been in, you would know what to do. So to give you guys a wider context about this, about how I lost my job. In my career, I've lost my job about 3 times. And that's gonna be like, oh my God, you hearing that, you're gonna be like, how can this guy have lost his job 3 times in his career? I've been doing what I do for over 15 years now as a graphic designer and now a brand designer. And 3 times I've lost my job. The first 2 times were based on the redundancy, and the 3rd time I was actually let go from that job. So I'm going to go into more detail about this. I'm going to do a series about this, about the times that I actually lost my job. It might not be one after the other, but I intend to tell the full story about my experience and what I learned from them. To give you even more context, I had just joined this company. I'm not going to say the names. I'm not going to say anybody's names or whatever, so that I don't tarnish their names. It wouldn't be fair. But I am going to be honest about my experience as much as possible. So I had been unemployed for about a year, and this is after being made redundant from a previous role. And I'd been looking for a job. Me being a senior level, it's harder to find the job. Sometimes it gets even more competitive. Whereas junior, I feel like I had a better experience as a junior finding a job, and it was much easier for me to find a job when I was a junior designer. But as a senior designer, I found it quite hard. So I got made redundant from a job that was a good job. It paid well. It was the highest I had been paid in my career. But due to the environment of the tech industry, which is where I generally specialize in my employments, I was let go because I was one of the newer recruits, and the first staff members that really get cut is the marketing staff members. So I, as the brand designer, they decided that to let me go. But I got a free laptop from it. I got a bit of a payout. Wasn't a lot, but at least I got a really good MacBook from it. So, but I thought, it'll be much kind of easy. Not easy, but I thought it would be easier than it was to find a new job. And at that time I had been recently engaged to my now wife, and it's a very awkward time to not have a job. So I was maxing out my credit cards, and I was just stressed while planning a wedding, while looking for a job. And I thought a job would come through. I'd be going through interviews, getting the rejection letters, having to do design tasks, which is another topic in itself. And it was hard. But fortunately, thank God, I got this job right before I got married. And it was an interesting one because I started like maybe 2 weeks before my wedding ceremony, which was good because I could start on time so I can get paid, and I could use the money on my honeymoon and pay rent and all that kind of stuff. So even though I had to use basically all my holidays for my honeymoon and stuff, it was a no-brainer for me, and it came out at the right time. Now, this was another tech company. It was a global company basically, and it had gone through a merger between 2 different companies. And when it comes to when companies merge, the culture can be you're trying to blend 2 cultures. It's like trying to blend 2 families together. They have their own cultures, and it's the same in the workplace. So when there's a merger in different companies, 2 different companies merge, you have some people get let go, there's some bad blood with them, and then they're still trying to work out their culture. I'm trying to be as transparent without offending anyone. So I came in at a very interesting time, and even one of my managers at the time said that it was actually very unfair on me because they had just gone through a merger, I was getting married and all that kind of stuff, so I probably shouldn't have started when I did start. So I found it difficult to follow the culture and coming in when things are a bit turbulent. Long story cut short, I was let go because they felt like I didn't meet certain expectations. And that happens. That happens it happens to a lot of people, to be honest. So if you've ever been fired or let go from a job, it's not necessarily a reflection on your skills, on your ability, but it's also a reflection on the timing, it's a reflection on the culture. There's many circumstances. And so I was let go from that job. And ever since then, I haven't had a job. And this was in 2023. So about for a year and a half now, I haven't had a job. Not a normal job anyway. I haven't worked in a 9 to 5 for about a year and a half now. And what's that been like? It has been challenging. I've learned a lot. And I never thought I would be working for myself full time at this time. It wasn't the plan. Really wasn't the plan yet. You know, I thought, oh, maybe I'll build a business slowly over time and grow it in my own time slowly until it got to a point where having a 9 to 5 didn't make sense. But for some reason, I got let go at the time that I did, and I've had to make things work since then. But this video is not necessarily about the fact that I got fired. I could do a huge story time about things going on and all that kind of stuff, but I just don't think sharing all that information at this stage is going to build anyone up. Probably for another time, but I don't think now's the time to go through all that detail. I will at some point, but I don't want to distract from the main purpose of this video. The main purpose of this video is about what I've learned since I've been fired. Let's rephrase that. Since I got let go and since I've worked for myself. And what I've learned is that no matter what, someone might tell you one thing, but it's not a reflection on who you are. Now, the last thing I was told before I was let go from that job was that you do not have the ability of a senior designer. We don't feel like you have the ability and the skills of a senior designer, despite being in the game for about 15 years. So one of the questions I did ask was like, so what expectations am I not meeting? And this was in one of those calls where it's just like, why is HR in the call? And you're like, oh, okay. This could go two ways. They could either be saying that I've passed probation or I haven't passed probation. Unfortunately for me, I didn't pass probation. And unfortunately for them, maybe. Time will tell. But it got to a point where, they said that my skills, they said, I just didn't meet their expectations. And that's just the way it is. I could have taken that to heart. And it did hit me hard. It hit my pride because I'm just like, wow, am I really the skilled designer that I think I am? Am I as good as I think I am? Because I've spent a lot of time building my confidence and I was so confident in what I do. I still am. But when that hit me, I was just like, whoa. Because it was the first time that I had been let go because of performance, not because of the environment and the industry at the time. The other two times were, like I said, they were redundancies. So it wasn't really a reflection on my skills. It was a reflection on the industry. But with this one, it was different, and it felt different because it felt like an attack on my ability, an attack on my self-confidence. And it did affect my confidence. But I didn't really have the time to wallow and think about how it affected me for a long time. I just didn't think I had the time to think about that because I had money to make. I was like, how am I going to survive? I've just been married. How am I going to support my wife? These are real things. So I didn't even have time to really think about how it affected me mentally. I just had to hit the ground running and just continue working as if I'm just a freelancer and working as if I'm just a full-time entrepreneur. And I don't think it was a mistake that I was let go from that job. I think it was meant to happen because it's preparing me for what is to come, whatever that is. And the things that I've learned is that your confidence cannot be rooted in other people. It can't be rooted in your employer. It cannot be rooted in your friends. It can't be rooted in anyone but yourself. And if you do believe in God, you cannot be rooted in anything but God. For me, my confidence comes from my faith. Like the Bible says, I'm a masterpiece. So like, if I'm a masterpiece, I can't be thinking like something that's a draft. You see what I mean? Like something that's unfinished. Because the Bible says, I'm a masterpiece. God took his time making me as a unique person. And if I'm not supposed to be in a certain area, it's his kindness to take me out of that. And I've learned that my confidence comes from that. Not even just on my ability, because sometimes I'm not going to work at my best. There's times that I don't design my best. So if my confidence was rooted in my performance, I'd be finished. If my confidence was rooted in, someone offering me a job, I'd be finished. But I've had so many job rejections that I'm just so used to it now. I'm just like, yeah, okay, fine. Because I've learned that God provides. I'm not the provider here. And I'm not the provider for myself. I'm not the provider for my wife. I'm not a provider for my family. The one that is the source is God, and He has provided. And the things I've got to work on, I'm not saying go leave your job, by the way. If you have a stable job, please stay in that job, be responsible, have at least 6 to 10 months saved up in order to try being an entrepreneur, running your own business. But for me, I just didn't have that choice. I had to dive in because I didn't have a choice. But the things I've learned, I wouldn't have learned while I was in that job. I wouldn't have learned more about my value. I've charged the most for projects that I ever have. I hit my first 5-figure year, despite all the other things that are going on. And life is hard. You know, there's other financial responsibilities. There's things that I still need to do as husband, as someone that's eventually going to be a father at some point in life. There's goals that I need to reach, financial goals and stuff. But to hit my first 5-figure year, the same year that I was let go from a job, is saying something. And you need to count your wins, because if your confidence is like easily shaken, looking back and saying, oh, I was successful in this area, I was successful with this client, etc., will give you the evidence that, you know, hey, the data is there that you're great. So if I stood there and if I sat there and thought what my manager told me about not having the skills of a senior designer is true, I would never be where I am now. And it's not like I've reached the pinnacle. I'm far from it. If it was like a mountain, I'm still at the bottom of the path. But I can see myself making improvements and making progress. I've worked on some awesome brands. I've worked on an African vodka brand. I've worked on a West African art gallery brand. I've worked on apps, the branding for apps. I've worked on the branding for food products and food services. I've worked on events. I've worked on so many things, and slowly and surely I'm getting more and more confident to call myself an independent designer, a brand designer. That's what I call myself. And there's people say, do you do this full time? No, before I used to say, oh, I'm doing it full time, but I'm still looking for a job. Now I probably don't even mention that I'm looking for a job. Like, if the right job comes, it comes. But in this season, I'm very open-minded to the fact that I might not get another job. Whatever God's plan is, and people might not understand it, but it's not even really my control. I'm just trying to see where God is taking me. And if the right job comes, it'll come. But if it doesn't, I'm also okay, because it's not my plans. So I'm going to make the most of each and every day. But I've learned the main thing about this is that if you've ever been let go from a job, do not let that define you. Because if you let it define you, your confidence is just weak. And your self-worth and awareness is just weak. Do not root your self-awareness on your status, the amount of money that you make, or your job, or what other people think of you. What do you think of yourself? Within. It comes from in here. It comes from in your mind. Like, whatever you think becomes true. And if you dwell on the fact that someone has let you go, if you dwell on the fact that you failed at this like project, because I've failed in a couple of projects before, and I've learned a lot from them. But if I let those things define me, then who am I really? And it'll be wicked for like God to give me more opportunities if I haven't rooted myself in what I've rooted myself in now. My confidence does not come from a job. And that's the main thing. That's the takeaway from that. That's what I've learned since I was let go from my last job. If you want to learn the details about this kind of stuff, just let me know in the comments. I don't know how much I'm going to share because it's the internet, is public, and even I've probably said too much, to be honest. But if you'd like to learn more about what it's like to work for yourself as a brand designer, work for yourself as a black designer, and the things I learned to also maybe prevent yourself from getting let go, because I learned a lot about, you know, not being afraid to get on the same page with your managers and the place that you work at. If you leave things vague, it leaves room for people to kind of take advantage and stuff like that. So I might just do another video on that, but I am going to talk about the other 2 times that I lost my jobs, and those one I'm free to go into as much detail as I want, because yeah, those ones are interesting, very interesting. Very, very interesting, but there's no bad blood there. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is just a story time kind of thing. I felt like it was necessary for me to share it. So if you would like me to share more about my experiences in the workplace as a designer and what it's been like running my own business as well, let me know, subscribe, hit the bell, drop it in the comments, follow me on socials, and I'll be more than happy to share all that information. So hope you enjoyed it, and stay safe, and until next time, peace.